This is Russ Mizell with the University of Florida. I'm a professor of entomology and have been with the University of Florida since 1982. In this seminar, I'm going to discuss the management of horseflies and deerflies, who are blood-sucking pests that most of you are probably well aware of. This project started with a high school science project for my sons, and it got so interesting that I continued it and actually published a paper on it. The purpose of the seminar is to educate the general public about controlling horseflies and deerflies, and for pest control operators, I'm going to suggest that this is potentially a profitable service that can be offered to consumers. So it's going to be several level talk. First part of it will be applicable to private individuals, homeowners with livestock bellies or just nuisance problems that occur. And the second part of it will be more focused on what commercial pest control operators might do in a number of venues that are affected by horseflies and deerflies as pests. So most pest control situations require a use of chemical insecticides. Sometimes these are toxic more than others. But in this particular case, we are not going to use any chemical at all. We're only going to use bio-based suppression. This does fall under the general term of pest control, accepted paradigm for pest control, which is called integrated pest management, or IPM as most people refer to it. It is a green strategy, and the tactics we're going to use are green. There will be multi-levels of service that are available out of this, as we discussed. Just doing it can generate goodwill. It's very unusual, at least parts of it are, so it's very unique. And I'm going to make the argument that a business model can be developed out of this, and potential profits can be made. So a little background on the pest. The family Tabanidae contains the horse and the deerflies, and these two groups are separated by several characteristics which I'll discuss in a minute. But there are about 8,000 species worldwide. We have 35 in Florida and similar numbers in most of the southeastern states. They are important pests since they're blood feeders of most mammals, and in certain places of the world they are important disease vectors. For example, in tropical southwest Africa, they carry loa loa, which is a filariasis that is involved in ostrachiasis type diseases. A lot of humans, even though they're not transmitting many diseases to humans in the United States, there are a lot of people who are allergic to their bites. They're extremely annoying, and an interesting fact that a lot of people don't know about them, in the immature stage, they are actually aquatic, and in some cases they are very beneficial because they're predators of other noxious organisms. And in the early stages, they usually feed on organic matter. Now, horseflies and deerflies are a little bit different in several ways. The males are primarily nectar feeders, whereas the females are both nectar and blood feeders, or at least can be. The main and most obvious difference is that horseflies are usually much larger than the deerflies, and for that reason you can separate them out. Another thing about them is their life cycle. The life cycle for both is pretty much the same. The eggs are laid on leaves around water sources, and they drop into the water. The eggs hatch. The larvae then spend amount of time, usually at least 6 months to a year or more, as immatures, and then they crawl out and pupate in a moist area, and then the adults emerge the next year. So one of the things that differs between horseflies and deerflies is their searching behavior. Now, deerflies in general emerge from from their pupation sites, and they search for a habitat that they like, and then they sit there and wait for their host prey to come to them. So they're kind of ambush predators. And the habitat that they use is quite a bit different than that horseflies use. And horseflies tend to act more like mosquitoes. They actually search on a vector. They continually fly and search. There's not any ambush characteristic to their search. And the other thing about the two groups is that they respond to different types of visual cues and odor cues. And that transmits into the way that they behave around the host, how they find their host, how they accept their host, and what factors that can be used to exploit to trap. So usually the chrysop species of deerflies attack the highest body part, and the horseflies, the larger species, can attack anywhere they can get a blood meal. And the chrysop species of deerflies, and then in North Florida there's a common what was known as a yellow fly. It's a different genus, Dichloris variegatus. This species is very interesting. It can build up on the coastal areas in extremely high populations and bites and just drives people and animals crazy, such that you can't even go outside when they're around, beginning in midsummer. But as you move inland, the numbers actually decrease quite a bit, and where they are in low populations, they're usually just bite people around the legs. Now, I'm going to talk about a number of available trapping methods for the groups in general, and then I'm going to focus on the deerflies, and then I'll come back to how we might use all of these trapping methods to be successful in different kinds of venues. So, and you can find these on the web. Each of these slides has a website that you can purchase these traps from, or at least find out some more information about them. The horsepower trap is commercially available. It's fairly expensive. It does catch most of the species of deerflies and horseflies that are out. It's very easy to use, but you need to protect it from grazing animals because they'll knock it over. And it's just a matter of some screens, some PVC, a collecting vial, and you see that it has this black ball that is hanging down and creates a visual cue that is moving that attracts the flies. The Epps fly trap is another commercially available trap. You can see that this one is more of a barrier. It has these two trays here, and there's soapy water in there. And it's also fairly expensive, but commercially available. The fly trap was invented for tsetse flies in Africa, and it is fairly complicated and cumbersome to put together, but it is very effective for large range of biting flies in the United States. This is the lower fly trap. It was invented by people in the Netherlands. It's a simpler trap here. Both of these were homemade. It's just basically, you see again, we have the moving ball, we have a collection device on the top, and we have a funnel to guide the insects up into the collection ball. Okay, other types of traps are available, and a number of people have invented these things, or they've been around for use for other insect collecting projects. The beach balls are just covered with stickum. I'll show you what that is in a minute. And basically you see they're black or blue, and those hang and move, and they are attracted to the insects that way. This one is very attractive to the yellow flies. The malaise trap is just a barrier, and on each end we have the collection vials, and it is useful to collect all kinds of insects. The French trap was made by Dr. French, and you can see that it has the black ball to move around in the wind, and has a white and a black area, and then inside here there's a screen up here at the top and a collecting vial, and then right here inside there's also a screen with a collecting apparatus that you can't see. All of these have positive and negatives relative to what you're trying to do, and work best for certain groups of the pests that we're talking about. Now the yellow fly, I'll mention this, make a special case of this, because as I said, certain times of the year, say late May to July, these things can build up along the Gulf Coast at just amazing numbers, and it's really difficult to spend any time in the yard in some of these places. But these blue balls really catch large numbers, but they don't catch enough really to do the job. But it is satisfying to see so many of them get caught. Now that same technology can be used in livestock facilities where you don't have that kind of fly pressure, and this is an example of the kind of things that you can do with balls. Now this one doesn't have the stickum on it, but that's what you would do. You would put the stickum on here, you would hang them from the ceilings around here, and more than one, and then the insects would come in there and go to either a blue or a black ball. So if you're going to do Tabanidae trapping, then you have to realize that while these things occur from south to north all over the United States in the summertime, late spring, early summer, and on into the fall, you're going to have different species coming out at different times depending upon your location. The number of species, the number of an individual species of either horseflies or deerflies will vary quite a bit from year to year. Sometimes they'll be in high numbers, sometimes next year you won't see them at all. And it also depends on what's available for them to feed on. Where you have lots of food like white-tailed deer and other small mammals and such, they're going to be less likely to attack you and your livestock. But certainly one common resource that they need is a water source, because that's where they develop. And so anytime you have a pond or a stream or something like that, you're going to have problems with this pest. Back up here, what we did is we ran, and this will depend on how many insects you have attacking, but we had so many insects out when we did this test that we were able to run the truck for about a minute or two. We would stop, we would count the insects on each of the traps, re-randomize them, make sure the stickum was good, and then do it again. And over the course of the summer that we did this study, we caught so many insects that we actually wiped them out as we went along, and we had to find new locations that hadn't been trapped. To you too, if you're a fan. Of course, as the season goes along, the insects are going to disappear anyway. So using this apparatus, and you can see here on the right, this is the kind of habitat we found them in. It's a corridor between a hardwood and conifer forest out in the country. This is about 30 meters wide, and we ran the truck down through the middle of that just under 7 miles an hour. And we also built a number of other apparati that we could use to ask various questions. And over here in the list, of course, is what we did. And we looked at everything we could think of to see what was really going on in the behavior of these insects. So the first thing we did, we looked at color, and this we used pyramid traps with 4 sides. We hadn't gotten to the pots yet, so we did that, and you can see that that black and red and tan were better than clear, white, and yellow. And then we looked at 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional, and you can see that the 3-dimensional was significantly higher than the 2-dimensional, and that the 6-inch, the smaller of the 3, actually was better than the 7th and 8-inch pots. We then started using pots, and we because we hadn't used the pots to look at color, we went back and looked at color, and we found out that blue was actually caught more deerflies than the black and the red. So then we decided we would look at whether there was a difference between actual colors of blue. And again, we found that yes, there was a difference, and these are the actual colors that we used: neon blue, royal blue, and this baby blue, which you can see that the baby blue is much whiter and has less blue in it than the other 2 colors. And I have a reflectance spectrophotometer that I can use to measure the wavelengths that are reflected off of materials. And here I am showing you the difference between the 3 pots in terms of the actual wavelength of light that is reflected from them. And you can see that the neon blue pot had a very tight spectral reflectance pattern centered around blue to yellow. The royal one had much wider, covering the UV and all the way up into green and yellow. And then the baby blue was very white, as you see. It had a lot of different wavelengths in it. So these are the actual numbers. When we looked at some other colors, we got here we're looking at the background. We're taking the blue pot, the best pot that we have, and we're putting it on a background for contrast and to see how the flies respond to that. And you can see that aluminum foil actually inhibited them. If you put it on a blue background, then that actually reduced the number because they couldn't see it as well. And when you put it on white and provided the greatest contrast, that had the significantly highest number of trap catch. We also looked at height. We didn't catch anything up in these higher 10 or 15 feet. We did catch at 5, and then there was also one inside the bed here at 2.5, and we got about 50-50 on at those 2 heights. So they were actually responding to the moving vehicle and running, flying around that, and that's where they got caught on the inside there. We then went back because we knew that the dark blue color was the optimum, and when we had looked at the size early on, we were using black because we didn't know, we hadn't done the color comparison yet. So where the 6-inch was was more successful at trapping flies when it was black, the suboptimal color. When we went to the blue with the optimum color, you see the size range manifested itself, but there was no difference except at the really small pot. When you got 4 inches to 10 inches, there was no significant difference. This is what the optimum trap looks like, and you can see the flies that we caught here and how they land on it. They actually attack it. And the other thing that maybe I haven't emphasized is that the trap itself, not only is it moving on the vehicle, but it's also mounted on this rod, which allows it to swing and rotate as you move the truck, so that it enhances the movement of the trap, and perhaps is more like what would you would have if an animal was shaking its head or trying to get away from the flies, basically counterproductive. So we also looked at whether any types of odors or baits might be effective for these deer flies, and there are other deer flies and horse flies or other biting flies that actually do respond to various chemicals, but in this particular case we could not find a positive or negative result from any of the chemicals that we tested. Now, octanol is a chemical that is produced when grass is chewed by animals, and that's been shown in Africa to be an attractant for the tsetse flies, and indeed it is attractive for some horse flies and other species of deer flies, but not the ones that we were working with. So basically, out of that work, you can see that you can mount these traps on any kind of moving vehicle, or even your head or horses, and the flies will respond. They usually respond to whatever's highest there with the proper color and size, and you can effectively take them out. And because they're ambush predators, they're coming out, and there's a finite number of them, then by doing this, you're going to be able to eliminate them in a particular location if you do it habitually. And so if you were going to have if you have these in your backyard as a problem, and you were going to have a pool party or wedding or something in your backyard, you're going to have a problem, because deer flies are a royal nuisance since they're blood feeders, and this is a way to certainly suppress their numbers in a short period of time. And also, since they're emergent and from the water, and that is also a limited process, then probably for days or even at some times of the season, once you eliminate them, you won't have them again. But it's a very effective way to control certain deer flies. Now, in the course of this work, we also captured a few horse flies in this with this apparatus, and the species that we collected were more primitive ones, and ones that retained behavior that was closer to the deer fly and horse fly common ancestor, as you would expect. Okay, so this is a list of what we tested and how it came out. It's all in the presentation, as I say there. So this is an overview of the results. There are lots of ways that, as I say, that you can deploy this. You just have to have it above your head and moving. You have to have linear displacement. You can't stand in one place and wave it around. And also, in this particular case, for deer flies, you have to go where they are, because again, they're ambush predators. They're sitting someplace, they're waiting for you. You have to go for them. Now that's not a problem when you're in the backyard because you know they're there. But the horse flies are going to come to you. So how would you use this uh, to target deer flies, and particularly since they're more of an acute problem? Uh, you have to have the seasonal abundance, which is what this word phenology means there. You have to know when they're out. That's fairly easy. Maybe county agents will get some calls from people, and you can ask them when that happens. And this is in reference to somebody that might want to start a business controlling these things. You can use the traps to do some test runs, some exploratory runs in a particular area to find out whether they're out yet or not. In North Florida, they usually emerge about the first week in April, or about the same time that the cattle egrets show up. So you'll just have to use your imagination and utilize what I've told you here, and as far as I'm concerned, it has great potential, and it really does work. And these are some information sources on this particular deerfly trap, and you can use those, including the original paper that I published in the Florida Entomologist with my sons. Now, before I go to trapping the livestock facilities and such, the response to this has just been amazing, and people have gone nuts because these things are such a problem, and people get a big kick out of the technology and the fact that they can catch so many insects in a very simple, effective, and cheap way. And here are just a few of the emails and letters and such that I've had sent to me unsolicited when people have found out about this trap. And of course, I especially like this one here. and there are several others along that same vein. But, you know, it's just a blue pot, and it's just something that is exploiting knowledge of the behavior of this pestiferous insect. So now we're gonna change over to talk about the control of tabanid flies in general, and perhaps as a business for pest control operators. We're just going to continue to exploit what we know and what I've talked about, but we're going to use the other tools, not just the trolling deerfly trap. So I'm going to go over these different venues here and just discuss briefly about what you can do at each one of those. Of course, the first one is yards, and most of the technology that we've talked about is applicable to that, so that's an easy one. If you've got deer flies or horse flies in your yard, and horse flies come around swimming pools and such, so they can be a problem in backyards, and you'll have to use some different technology for them over and above the trolling deerfly trap. For trails, I've had a number of people that work in state parks and such who have hiking trails or biking trails, and the trolling deerfly trap is very effective for that. It's a you know, they're looking for openings to fly in. They go there and they ambush, and people have used the trolling deerfly trap to really suppress biting flies on trails. Now, paddocks and such, what we're talking about here, where you may have a horse or two or three or livestock around your barn and near your dwellings, and this is another level of trapping that is more sophisticated and more difficult, because you're going to have a wider area to control them, and you can still use the deerfly trap for the deer flies, but you need other traps for the horse flies. And on the other hand, the stickum balls and the horse powder, the Epps trap or the Enzu trap, they're going to catch all the species of deer flies that are there. They will take out a number of those. So you would need to place these things around the area that you're trying to control. Of course, if you're controlling them for cattle or horses, you have to make sure that these traps are not available for the animals to chew on or knock over. So you have to protect them, and you're going to have to take a look at the area you're trying to protect, and kind of get an idea of where they might be coming from a source sink type thing. If you've got part of your paddock adjoins a forest or water or swamp or something like that, well, it's logical to assume that most of them are going to come from that area, so that's where you need to concentrate your control tactics. Now, larger and maybe more expensive areas like racetracks and golf courses and such, you just take what I've said and increase it by order of magnitude in terms of difficulty, but the returns would be much greater. You've got larger areas to cover, but you can also charge more for the service, because these things can be really bad at some locations around the country, and just putting a dent in them, lowering their numbers by any significant amount can pay off. So again, let me stress that if you're going to attempt this, you really need to have good information on the biological factors affecting all this stuff. Your success will depend on it. Where you are in the country will determine when the insects are out, time of year likewise. The species composition will also be heavily dependent on where you are in the country and the habitat around you. The next thing is going to be what type of animals you're trying to protect, how many. So all these things need to be considered. I do think that, again, to reiterate, this is a unique pest control company opportunity. I think a plan can be developed that would be a money-making enterprise under certain situations. It has a number of characteristics that are attractive to the general public. We are talking about IPM tactics and strategies. We're not talking about pesticides. Everybody talks about eco-friendly or environment or organic or whatever, but it's all in terms of green technology. And from that standpoint, it's much safer and a whole different approach from using chemicals. So again, even if you're not going to do this for profit, it's certainly useful as a private individual in your backyard or for your relatives or whatever. As a pest control company, you might do this to develop some goodwill, and certainly when you start driving around with blue pots on your trucks or sticky balls or sticky hats or whatever, and you've got bugs on them, you're going to draw attention to yourself, and so it's up to you to exploit that. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention. My contact information is on this website, and I wish you good luck in using a technology that I just had tremendous fun developing. So good luck, good hunting.